One of Scott Morrison's favourite narratives is that the Labor Party didn't support the Coalition's pandemic response. But this claim is pure hypocrisy. Let's take a closer look.
Why is it, Mr Speaker, that this opposition constantly throughout this pandemic has not sought to support but has only sought to undermine for their petty political purposes? Those opposite like to pretend to bipartisanship on many issues, Mr Speaker. They like to pretend to it and they'll try to do it before this year's election. But what I know, Mr Speaker, is they talk out both sides of their mouth. They say they support JobKeeper, but they come in here and they bag it, Mr Speaker. They say they support us on national security, but then they speak out the other side of their mouth. You can't have an each-way bet on Australia's economy. You can't have an each-way bet on national security, Mr Speaker. And there's no safety in anyone taking a one-way bet on this leader of the Labor Party.
As the economy was being hit, the Coalition introduced a lot of legislation. For all of them, Labor said that they would work constructively with the government to ensure things don't get held up.
We've indicated publicly, each and every day, that we would be supportive of any bring forward of health measures and we would support any economic stimulus legislation. We have provided the government with that absolute certainty that at the end of the process we would put forward our suggestions and our views to try and improve the legislation, but we would not stand in the way of economic stimulus or any bring forward of any health measures that were proposed. That is the responsible thing to do.
And when it came down to it, Labor voted in favour of the measures proposed by the Coalition and the laws were passed quickly.
And I thank the opposition for facilitating the passage of these bills through the Parliament.
This is apparently what Scott Morrison considers a lack of support. But if you want to know what lack of support during a financial crisis really looks like, you have to go back to the global financial crisis of 2008. At that time, the Labor government under Kevin Rudd introduced 2 stimulus packages that helped Australia avoid a recession that hit almost every other country. The Coalition, then in opposition, wasn't very supportive. In response to the first stimulus package, this is what the Coalition had to say.
The Rudd Labor government is using the global financial crisis as an excuse for its utter incompetence and mismanagement.
Now, we know that the government's into the blame game and they'll blame the global financial crisis for every event that occurs hereafter. However incompetent, however bungled the government's management of the economy, they will be blaming the global crisis.
Don't forget that Labor has this very nervous Treasurer out there on a regular basis, providing performances which only get worse. He provides performances which are an embarrassment to this country, not just domestically but internationally as well.
Not long after, when the Rudd government introduced its second stimulus package, the Coalition was even less supportive.
Mr Speaker, the opposition will vote against this package in the House and in the Senate.
This is a package of panic, Mr Speaker. It is reckless in its magnitude and it is ineffective in its composition. And for these reasons, I am extremely proud to stand here in this parliament this evening with my leader, my coalition colleagues, and as the member for Cook, representing a community that pays its way, that understands the cost of debt and the meaning of responsibility, and as the Shadow Minister for Housing and Local Government, and oppose this package that is before this parliament. It ignores Australia's unique situation. It indentures future Australians like my daughter and her sibling-to-be with a generation of Labor debt of up to $200 billion.
And in fact, the Coalition voted against the legislation. Here's the record, with both Scott Morrison and Peter Dutton voting no. At that time, Peter Dutton had something he wanted to contribute when he voted against Labor's stimulus package.
Today is the day that the Labor Party put into debt the future generation of Australian children. This is a territory, of course, not unfamiliar to the Labor Party, and one who follows the Labor Party and understands the way in which they've managed the economy, in fact, over decades, and in previous administrations would recognise this as very much the way of Labor into the future. We thought these days were in fact behind. We thought the lessons had been learnt by the Labor Party about plunging this country into significant debt, but clearly they hadn't.
The coalition was really worried about saddling future generations with debt. Well, that worry evaporated pretty quickly once they came back into power. Here is the Australian government's debt. This was when Labor was last in government. And this is the Liberal National Party taking debt as high as they can ever since. If you made it to the end, then thank you. These videos take ages to make, and right now I'm a one-man show. If you'd like to help support this channel grow, consider checking out my Patreon page. Links are in the description below.